Right, so part two of chapter 11, which we're calling the liberal icons. We're talking about liberal icons. The next icon on the list that I want to discuss is John Dewey. Um, he was alive from 1859 to 1952. Um, he famously lost to Truman in a presidential bid, but he was a totalitarian socialist, meaning that he envisioned a total, or one of his main causes or pet causes was a total government takeover of all education through public schools, meaning he was one of those people who thought that the government should be in charge of your child's schooling from a federal level, not state or local, but from federal. Uh, Long before there was even a national uh, education association or union to do just that, meaning that he was probably the grandfather of educational indoctrination. Never happened, of course, but that was one of his pet projects. Um, I want to say again, or stipulate again, not all these people have long rap sheet of liberal BS, and some of these people have actually done some good things, said some things that are moderate or even right wing. Some of them are so confused that they're all over the place, and you can't even understand how they could be this and that at the same time. Politics in the past has not always run in a straight line. Sometimes there's a little crossover, and it makes it confusing for a lot of people. However, there's no confusion when it comes to our next liberal icon, Margaret Sanger. I've brought her up before when it comes to role models. This one's a peach, and yet brought up even to this day constantly. And I've researched this woman, and I cannot find a single characteristic or trait of value to be found. She's a monster. This chick was alive from 1879 to 1966, and she was everywhere. She was in everything. She founded the American Birth Control Center, which of course later became Planned Parenthood. In of itself, that would be like, okay, what we do, but if she saw what Planned Parenthood was doing today, I'm sure she'd be happy, but originally, theoretically, she wasn't about the abortion. She was about avoiding having to have abortions. If ever there was a feather in the cap of a monster, that might have been the one and only feather. But even that is a dubious belief that she actually thought that. When you hear the rest of it, you'll know why I say that. She was also a huge hypocrite, of course. As one of 11 children, she advocated all her life that families that are large families, lots of children, are the cause of all the ills of society. And yet she was the sixth of the 11 children. I'm not sure where she would have cut off the difference between a small family and a large family, but more than likely it would have been before the sixth child. So she herself, who became a liberal icon, she herself who became a champion of small families and eugenics and all the other stuff, wouldn't even have existed if her idea about small families was adhered to the way she herself wanted it. I'm not sure if that's irony, karma, tragedy, there's something there. Whatever that is, it's hypocritical. What a shock, another hypocritical liberal. She joined several socialist parties and organizations, of course. Again, like I said, she was everywhere. She also joined the IWW, as we mentioned with the previous, with Mr. Debs, another socialist organization. She opened up the first birth control center, which was, of course, at the time illegal, and of course, therefore, later, soon after, it was shut down by the police. But knowing it was illegal didn't stop her from doing something illegal. You'll notice that there's a thread through a lot of these liberal icons, and that is they tend to do whatever the hell they want, legal or not. She, again, being everywhere, she took a trip to India and met Gandhi, thinking that she had somebody there that would understand her. And this is a funny little thing, but Gandhi basically repudiated everything she had to say, didn't agree with anything. Posed her views right down the line. And said so publicly, by the way. Not a secret. Much like the Nazis, she advocated parents who would give birth to diseased babies and who would not, babies who would not become human beings practically, or delinquents, they would become delinquents or whatever, is the greatest sin of all. I mean, that parents who would knowingly give birth to babies who were abnormal, with birth defects, low IQs, which would turn them into delinquents and criminals, is the greatest sin of all. Her idea of eugenics and a clean race, cleansing of the race, is Nazi down from the right down the line. And this is long before Nazis even existed. She was a Nazi socialist fascist before there were any. She belonged to the American Eugenics Society and the English Eugenics Society. So she wasn't just talking about eugenics, she actually was members of societies that sought to make those ideas reality. She wrote extensively about the inferiority and substandard morality of particular races, such as the Australian Aborigines, which she said were just a step higher than the chimpanzee in brain development. Now, I don't know about you, but that stinks of bigotry. It stinks of a type of fascist superiority, and it's just dead wrong. As anyone knows now, after seeing the Aborigines in Australia gain equality there, that these people have, as many ancient peoples are, have superior capabilities, brain capacity, ancient, innate knowledges, and that tie them to their land and the earth, and that are brought forth in the way they live their lives. They're capable of amazing thing, and not just them, of course, all of the ancient peoples of the earth. This is just sick garbage. That's all it is. Sick and twisted. She was once a guest speaker in 1926 of, drum roll please, the KKK. demonstrating her hatred of races of people more prone to sexual behaviors. One of her big bugaboos was certain races are, they just stoop more than she thought was kosher. Um, they are more sexually active and therefore a problem. Um, it's that whole big family, small family problem that she had. And she used that platform to speak in front of the KKK. Again, proving that the KKK were Democrats, that they were left wing, and that this kind of thinking went hand in glove with the white supremacy thinking of the KKK. That's what Margaret Sanger was. She used her influence to not just make families smaller, but to cleanse the white race. She used her influence to try to kill any other races or limit the birthing of members of any other race that she found to be inferior to hers, which was pretty much every other race. She was known to say things that would lead one to understand that she purposely wanted to introduce birth control into the societies and cultures of those races so that their numbers would remain limited, and so that the white race, her race, would be in the majority forever. Now, I don't know about you, but anyone who thinks that this person should be lauded or canonized or put on a pedestal or what have you is insane. And yet there are Margaret Sanger Awards in Planned Parenthood. There are statues and plaques and historical monuments to this woman. Hillary Clinton called her out specifically as one of her idols. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be associated with a monster like that. And isn't it interesting that that hypocrisy comes rearing its ugly head around again? And all this stuff that liberals talk about trying to end any real substantive debate with right-wingers by just calling them names, bigots, homophobes, racists, white supremacist ties and all this other crap, as we discussed before. But historically, they are actually really guilty of these ties. Projection, deflection, redirection, whatever you want to call it. That's the way it is, folks. Upton Sinclair. This human was alive from 1878 to 1968. He was a socialist writer and politician. He wrote a book called Boston, among many books he wrote, in which he sided with convicted terrorists that were actually a current event at the time. And in 2005, there were papers that were discovered that proved that he knew about the guilt of these men, but he felt that the lying about them so that he could support them served his foreign readers better, because foreign readers made up a vast majority of his readership. The lie served better than the truth. Isn't it? It is amazing how often liberals will say a lie will serve better than the truth. They do it with their fake news. They do it with all sorts of things. Their hypocrisy and whatnot. And it's because, again, agenda trumps all. If it doesn't serve the agenda as a truthful thing, then it must be done as a lie in order to do so. Upton Sinclair ran for Congress as as a socialist twice, and of course, lost. Also, he ran for the Senate once, lost. He ran for the governor of California in 1934, pretending to not be a socialist and a communist and the rest because he ran on a Democrat ticket with a scheme that people found out about. It was barely, hidden, to try to bring communism to the state of California. Now you have to understand, the state of California was a republic, like Texas. They still called the Republic of California. There's nothing republic about it anymore, but back in the day, it was a pretty right-wing state. To try to sneak communism into it did not bode well with the voters, and of course, he failed again. So failure after failure after failure. He noted how many votes he received as a Democrat running for California versus how many fewer he ran when he was running as a socialist for Congress and Senate, which caused him to conclude that Americans will take socialism. They just won't take the label. Now, think about that. And I've said this before too, and many other right-wingers have said this too. And it's more true today than it was back in the 30s. And that is, what a lot of Americans don't realize is just how socialist this country has become. But it hasn't become socialist because the socialists are saying, hi, we're socialists, vote for me, vote for us. It's not because the communists are saying, we want communist-like government to run the United States of America, vote for us. No. They've done it by pretending they're moderate, by pretending they're just garden variety Democrats, and then doing socialist things after they're elected. I talked about the slippery slope. Well, this is part of that incrementalism, that gradualism, that drip, drip, drip of slowly moving the country to the left, sometimes in fits and starts, sometimes giant leaps, but mostly slowly. Backdoor things people don't even know about are happening. And then all of a sudden, you look back and you go, how the hell did we get here? We get here by not labeling what we really are, by not calling a spade, by hiding behind euphemism, by hiding behind acceptable words and acceptable language and acceptable titles and acceptable names. These politicians, for instance, get away with murder. Basically, the murder of a right-wing conservative republic known as the United States of America. And we'll get on to our next glittering jewel of liberal iconography, whatever it is, in our next video, part 3. See you then.